Stop buying meat from these 5 UK supermarkets. What if the meat in your fridge wasn't exactly what you thought it was, not fresher, not safer? And in some cases, not even the animal printed on the label. Millions of people across the UK walk into supermarkets every week, trusting that the meat they buy is safe, properly sourced, and honestly labeled. But behind the bright lights of supermarket aisles, and the reassuring packaging, lies a supply chain most shoppers never see. A chain filled with hidden shortcuts, questionable sourcing, and scandals the industry would rather you forget. From shocking food investigations, to contamination warnings, and even past meat substitution scandals. Some of Britain's biggest supermarkets have faced serious questions about the meat they sell, and today, we're going to reveal 5 UK supermarkets where experts say you should think twice before buying meat. But here's the twist. Point one of them is one of the most popular supermarkets in Britain. And another is known for being cheap, but not necessarily safe. By the end of this video, you may never look at supermarket meat the same way again. So the real question is, would you risk it? Let's investigate. The UK has one of the most tightly regulated food systems in the world. Strict safety rules, regular inspections, and traceability systems designed to track food from farm to shelf. But despite those safeguards, problems still happen. In the past decade alone, the British food industry has been rocked by several shocking meat controversies: mislabeled product, contaminated batches, imported meat that didn't meet expected standards, and supermarkets caught selling products that raised serious concerns. The truth is, most shoppers assume supermarkets carefully check every supplier. But modern food supply chains are incredibly complex. One piece of meat might travel through 5 or 6 companies before reaching a supermarket shelf: farm, processing plant, distributor, packaging company, logistics, retailer, and at every step, something can go wrong, which brings us to the 5 supermarkets we're about to investigate. Some of these stories involve past scandals, others involve supply chain controversies, and some reveal practices that food experts say consumers should understand before buying. But one case in particular still shocks people today. Point 3. The secret world of supermarket meat. Before we reveal the supermarkets, you need to understand something most shoppers never think about. Supermarket meat is not always sourced directly from local farms. In fact, much of it comes from global supply networks. That means beef might come from Ireland, chicken from Eastern Europe, pork from multiple processing facilities, sometimes even from countries thousands of miles away. And while imports aren't necessarily bad, they make traceability more complicated. Food safety investigators often say the biggest risks appear when supply chains become too long, because the longer the chain, the easier it is for mistakes, mislabeling, or even fraud to slip through. And that's exactly what happened in one of the biggest food scandals in UK history. A scandal that shook consumer trust and exposed weaknesses in the supermarket meat industry. Shocking case study: the horsemeat scandal. In 2013, Europe was hit by one of the most shocking food scandals ever uncovered. Products labeled as beef were found to contain horse meat. Lasagna, burgers, ready meals, all sold across major supermarkets. Consumers were outraged, not only because of the deception, but because it exposed how little control retailers had over complex supply chains. Investigations revealed meat had passed through multiple countries and middlemen before reaching supermarkets. Some retailers pulled products immediately, others faced serious questions about supplier checks. The scandal forced supermarkets to tighten sourcing rules. But experts warn, the underlying risk never completely disappeared. Which brings us to the first supermarket on our list. Tesco. Tesco is the largest supermarket chain in the UK. Millions of shoppers rely on it every week, but during the horsemeat scandal, Tesco found itself at the center of controversy. Tests revealed that some frozen burgers sold in Tesco stores contained significant levels of horse DNA. In some cases, it wasn't just contamination, the levels suggested horse meat had been deliberately mixed into the products. Tesco quickly removed the items and apologized publicly, but the damage was done. Consumers suddenly realized something disturbing. Even the biggest supermarket in Britain could be caught in a supply chain scandal. Tesco has since introduced stricter supplier checks. But the scandal remains one of the most talked about food industry controversies in the UK, and it's not the only supermarket that has faced criticism, because the next retailer on our list has been repeatedly questioned over its meat sourcing. Asda is famous for one thing above all else: low prices. But critics say extremely low prices can sometimes raise important questions. Because producing meat responsibly isn't cheap. Animal welfare standards. Quality feed, proper farming practices. All cost money. Some food experts argue that when meat prices drop too low, something in the supply chain has to give. ASDA has faced criticism in the past over certain imported meat products and supplier practices. Consumer watchdog groups have occasionally questioned the origin transparency of some low-cost products. ASDA insists it follows strict food safety regulations. And there is no evidence its products are unsafe, but critics say shoppers should always check labels carefully, especially when prices seem unusually low, because sometimes the real story is hidden in the fine print. And the next supermarket on this list proves exactly why that matters. 7. Supermarket number 3, Aldi. Aldi has exploded in popularity across the UK. Its low-cost model has disrupted the entire grocery market. But the discount supermarket sector has occasionally faced scrutiny over supply chains. In 2017, Aldi was caught up in a controversy involving meat products during routine testing investigations. While the company responded quickly and removed affected products, the situation highlighted a wider issue. Discount retailers often rely heavily on large international suppliers to keep costs low. Again, that doesn't automatically mean poor quality. But it can make supply chains harder to monitor. Food safety experts often stress that transparency matters just as much as price, because when consumers don't know exactly where meat comes from, trust becomes fragile. But the next supermarket controversy wasn't about price. It was about something even more worrying: food contamination fears. 8. Supermarket number 4, Sainsbury's. Sainsbury's markets itself as a premium supermarket with high standards, but even premium brands aren't immune to food safety scares. Over the years, several meat products sold through the retailer have been subject to precautionary recalls. Recalls happen across the food industry, but they reveal an uncomfortable truth: even carefully managed supply chains sometimes fail. Food safety recalls may involve contamination risks, incorrect labeling, or undeclared allergens. Sainsbury's usually acts quickly when issues appear, but these incidents remind shoppers of something important. Supermarket brands cannot control every stage of a complex food network. And sometimes, problems are only discovered after products reach shelves, which leads us to the final supermarket on our list, and surprisingly, it's one many people consider one of the most trusted retailers in the UK. 9. Supermarket number 5, Morrisons. Morrisons has traditionally promoted itself as a supermarket with strong ties to British farming. In fact, it owns some of its own meat processing facilities. But even this level of control hasn't completely shielded it from criticism. Some consumer groups have raised concerns about labeling clarity and sourcing transparency on certain products over the years. Again, there's no evidence of unsafe meat being sold. But experts often say shoppers should look beyond marketing claims. Because phrases like farm fresh or butcher's selection don't always mean what people assume. Sometimes they are simply branding language, not guarantees about origin. And that's where the real lesson begins. 10. Shocking truth about supermarket meat. Here's something many shoppers don't realize: most supermarkets don't actually produce the meat they sell. They rely on third-party suppliers and processors. That means even trusted brands depend heavily on external companies to maintain standards. And if one link in that chain fails, problems can reach store shelves surprisingly quickly. That's why food investigators say consumers should always stay informed. Because blind trust in supermarket branding isn't enough. And there are several warning signs smart shoppers watch for. 11. How to buy safer meat in the UK. Food experts often recommend a few simple steps. Check the country of origin. Shorter supply chains are usually easier to trace. Look for Red Tractor certification, which indicates UK farm standards. Consider buying from local butchers where sourcing is clearer. And always check recall alerts from food safety authorities. These small habits can make a big difference. Because while most supermarket meat is safe, understanding the system behind it helps consumers make smarter choices. 12. Powerful OUTRO. Supermarkets are designed to feel safe. Bright lights, neat packaging, friendly labels. But the truth is, the journey from farm to fridge is far more complicated than most people realize. And as past scandals have shown, even the biggest retailers can sometimes lose control of their supply chains. So the next time you walk through the meat aisle, Take a closer look. Read the labels. Ask questions. Because what you don't see might matter the most. And now we want to hear from you. Do you trust supermarket meat? Or have these investigations changed the way you shop? Let us know in the comments. And if you found this investigation eye-opening, like the video, share it, and subscribe for more deep dive food investigations. Because the next story we're working on might be even more surprising inside the supply chain. What supermarkets don't show. When shoppers walk into a supermarket, everything appears simple. Fresh meat, clear labels, neatly arranged shelves. But behind the scenes, the supply chain is anything but simple. A single pack of beef mince might pass through 4 different companies before it reaches the store. First, the cattle are raised on a farm, then transported to a slaughterhouse. After that, the meat may be sent to a large processing facility where it's cut, mixed, and packaged. Finally, it's shipped to distribution centers before arriving at supermarkets. Each step involves different businesses, different workers, and different standards. And sometimes, mistakes happen. Food investigators say that when problems appear, they usually begin far away from the supermarket shelf. Sometimes thousands of miles away. Because while supermarkets advertise British farming, some meat products may include ingredients from multiple countries. That doesn't automatically mean something is wrong. But it does make one thing clear. The modern food system is incredibly complicated. And the longer the chain, the harder it becomes to track every detail. Which brings us to a disturbing question. What happens when someone inside that system decides to cut corners? 14. The profit problem. Meat is one of the most competitive products in the supermarket industry. Retailers constantly battle to offer the lowest prices. But producing high-quality meat responsibly is expensive. Farmers must pay for animal feed, veterinary care, proper housing, transport, slaughter and processing. All of these costs add up. So when supermarkets advertise extremely cheap meat deals, experts often ask an uncomfortable question. Where are the savings coming from? Sometimes the answer is efficiency. But sometimes, it may involve lower-cost imports or complex supplier arrangements. Food industry analysts say pressure to keep prices low can push suppliers to operate on razor-thin margins. And in rare cases, that pressure can create opportunities for fraud or mislabeling. Which is exactly what investigators discovered during several European food scandals. And it's one reason regulators now conduct random DNA testing on certain meat products. Because history has already shown things aren't always what they seem. 15. The lab tests that changed everything. After the horse meat scandal shook Europe, regulators introduced new testing programs. Random samples of supermarket meat products were analyzed using DNA identification technology. These tests could reveal exactly which animal species were present in the product. Beef, pork, chicken, or something else entirely. The results shocked the industry. Although most products passed inspections, a small number still showed unexpected contamination. Sometimes this was accidental. Other times, it suggested serious supply chain failures. That's when authorities realized something important. Modern food fraud isn't always obvious. It doesn't happen in supermarket stores. It happens much earlier in the chain. At processing plants, distribution networks,